Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined, as always, by my good friend, extraordinaire analyst, and just that guy in life, my brother, Clint Cosgrove. What's up, big dog?
How you doing, man? It's great to be back with you for the best time of the week on a different day.
On a different day. We're here on a Sunday. The Titans just beat the Jaguars, so my beloved Buffalo Bills are guaranteed a playoff spot. My night just got a whole lot less anxiety-ridden because the Bills are in no matter what happens tonight with the Dolphins. So because of that,
fun.
Yeah, but also like probably a lot less beer consumed to like temper my either my rage or my
happiness. Less fun.
Very true. Very true. No, Clint, we're back today. We had your thoughts from Monaco last weekend, which I must say, A, amazing. B, the purest like Wisconsin content that has ever been produced, and C, some amazing insights into that game against LSU. And I think you saw a lot of positives from that game, like what this offense can be, and some of the negatives of what this defense is going to have to do once they are playing with and playing against the type of athletes we saw on that LSU team. So just, any other thoughts from, I guess not from Monaco right now, back in Chicago at the moment, but any other, thoughts, suggestions, or just sort of your overall feeling from that bowl game?
Yeah. I mean, you saw a rare, time where a head coach actually, sorry if my kid's screaming in the background, a rare time where a coach steps in and coaches a bowl game right after they were hired last year. I think that was really good to kind of like establish a baseline, get a feel for the players. Also let the players know who, you don't want to say run out, but who might not be part of the new system. You can kind of figure that out as a coach. The players can find that out as players. So I think that was kind of the first step in the evolution towards what we saw this year. I know it wasn't the greatest season by fan standards. But then I think we saw in this bowl game, kind of like they say, between game 1 and game 2, you'll see your biggest improvement. I think the bowl game with the young kids and the system in place for a year and people feeling comfortable and more guys defecting, even talented guys, there can be addition by subtraction if they don't fit the scheme, if they don't fit the culture, whatever it may be. Nothing against those guys, but I think we saw a next step in the evolution of what they are trying to build. You saw a quarterback who came in who had been hurt a lot of the year, but came in with a year under his belt pretty much, came in healthy and did what Wisconsin fans kind of expected him to do. We saw some young players, Jackson Aker. We saw Tretch.
Tretch Kakahuna, yeah.
Yeah, I don't try to pronounce his last name because I'll screw it up. So I just call him Tretch. Will Pauling, I think he took the next step in his development. And I don't care what anybody says. They'll be like, oh, that defense is Swiss cheese. Well, guess what? That defense would be top 2, top 3 talent-wise in the Big Ten, and I have a feeling they do pretty well in the Big Ten. So they have some young, big-time playmakers. LSU did have a big opt-out, obviously, in Jaden Daniels, which the game probably would have gotten ugly had he played, and I think we'll get to that as we talk about some of the additions on the defense. But overall, just I'm impressed. I really was. I thought because the spread I thought would be more than 10. And I was like, okay, something tells me that this game's going to be closer than I thought. So I took the over, which worked. And it was closer than I thought. I was not surprised, though. I thought the defense played physical. I think they played with effort. I think the offense you got glimpses of what you can expect to see in the future.
Good teams win, great teams cover, baby. That's how it goes. You know it. So speaking of that, though, we saw, I thought in that game, Garrett Nussmeier throws a really pretty ball. Like that dude I love the way the ball comes out of his hands. Like I think he throws a gorgeous ball. And so you saw some of the Badger corners get beat, but I think a lot of the times though, we saw some of the Badger linebackers get beat. We'd seen issues with run fits all season, and the staff is clearly seeing that too, because at this point they have now added 5 linebackers via the portal by my latest count, and they've had 4 guys going out. There was, and I think coming into the year, I know Bernie and I talked about this. We thought that linebacker was probably the most loaded position on the roster, but it has been a position of huge turnover in, just the past 15 months, especially. It is a completely new core. And what we're seeing, I think, with these guys that they are bringing in at linebacker, whether it's Jaheim Thomas or Leon Lowry or Sebastian Cheeks and Josiah Galvin, and we're seeing guys who are John Pius, I should mention as well, the really, really talented D2 player, or D2 FCS. Either way, he was an All-American at his last level. And they're going for more athletes, guys who are just simply more athletics and can cover more space. Do you see this as a trend that they will try to continue in sort of prep recruiting as well? Or what do you sort of make of all this changeover at the linebacker position?
Yeah, I think it's a trend you're going to continue to see. You're kind of preparing for the new Big Ten. It's still the Big Ten. It's still hard-nosed football. A lot of Midwest, tough, physical kids are going to be in the conference no matter what. But I think schematically, you're going to be a little more open. You got to have guys that can run and hit. If you have a bunch of slugs that are physical as hell, they're not going to line up and beat the crap out of USC. If you can get some physical guys and then guys you can run in space, then you got a chance. I mean, we saw USC go out to Notre Dame and literally get hit in the mouth. And so USC is going to have to do kind of the opposite of what we see Wisconsin doing right now. And they did. They went into Michigan and got, a linebacker safety type. And I think the way it evolves in the Big Ten is you're going to get the big safeties in high school. You're going to look for those guys moving down to linebackers so that they are, they're linebackers, but, they have the athleticism of a safety. And I think that's kind of the trend moving forward. You still got to be able to line up and go against, 21-12 personnel, even though you don't see it much. Ohio State's pretty spread. Purdue's going to be wide open. Illinois is going to run it down your throat. I think Nebraska is going to do a little bit of everything. USC obviously doesn't give a crap about defense, is going to throw the ball all over the field. It's all about him out there. So I think you got to find a nice combination, and the guys that they brought in are going to do that. One of the glaring deficiencies on defense, even though they were physical, when they got in the downhill battles, I think they did very well. It was the guys running in space, and the linebackers in this defense need to be not only guys who can cover, but they need to be able to rush the passer. You only have 3 down linemen. You're usually bringing a 4th. Now it can be a safety, it can be whatever, but a lot of the time that is going to be a linebacker. And so you got to have guys that can pass rush. Yet you got to have guys who can run sideline to sideline, that can carry a tight end vertical. So it's a very specific skill set. And you talk about the run fits, how they struggled with those this year. One of the big perks of being a 3-3-5 is the chaos it brings the offensive line. Every offensive lineman is almost triple reading. They have a triangle of guys that can, that they have to read, that they can eventually be responsible for when you have that 3-3 stack. Guys aren't 4 down aligned and you can only be 2 here, 2 here, 2 here. So there's confusion there, but at the same time, these linebackers who have been playing in a system where they're almost, I don't want to say 2-gapping, but they're reading off what's in front of them with 4 down linemen, that's an adjustment as well. So when you get these guys who are good in space, who can diagnose plays and then trigger, I think the defense becomes a lot better. They've got some great players coming in. They lost guys to the transfer portal. I'm sure a couple decided to leave because they might not fit the system. And I'm sure a couple decided to leave because they said there's some dudes coming in and I got a better chance to play elsewhere. I think it can be good for everybody, whether they're leaving or coming, but I think it's better for the Badgers overall.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see that, we're already seeing that at the linebacker position. We're seeing that through recruiting at the cornerback position, I think, a lot, because they're now going for guys who can mostly, it seems, be lockdown man outside corners. A lot of these guys, 6 foot, 6'2", who are, bigger, faster, longer than the previous counterparts in Leonard's 3-4, who were expected to be really high IQ football players. Play a lot of zone defense, disguise a lot of coverages on the back end, and make the most of that. And it seems like you mentioned those big safeties that come down and become linebackers. Everyone seems to want to find their own Kyle Hamilton. Is sort of like the best way that I can put it, right? Or everyone wants to find, I guess, Dax Hill from Michigan a couple of years ago. Yeah. Guys like that who are bigger, who are bigger and faster and sure tacklers. Because if those guys are going to have a lot of opportunities in open space to have to make that tackle without as much backup behind them. And so I think that we saw some deficiencies in missed tackles as well this season. So I think a lot of things are changing. And that to me was a surprise. What's not a surprise, though, is the turnover on the defensive line. We've seen a couple guys leave the portal already, Darren Varner, Rodas Johnson. And I know that the Badgers are, trying to get in on those coveted defensive linemen in the portal. But Clint, we've talked about this for years at this point, just how hard it is to get talented defensive linemen in the portal, because you got to pony up for them. You got to pony up for them big time.
They're like quarterbacks.
In some ways, it actually is, it's in some ways the hardest position to find, even more so than quarterbacks, because, it seems like there are enough quarterbacks to go around out there for the most part. But, let's talk about the Badgers' new quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke. I've heard, mixed reviews from Badger fans out there on the prospects they think of Tyler Van Dyke. I am a perpetual optimist, so I'm going to choose to think that he is going to do things, especially when it comes to, when he had his most success. Who was it under? Rhett Lashley. What does Rhett Lashley's system look like? Well, an awful lot like Phil Longo's.
Very similar.
And so I think there is a huge upside here because he still has a quick release. He can still throw a deep ball. Now he's not going to scramble as much as Mordecai, but
he's more athletic than people think.
But that's just where I was going. He is more athletic than you think. He can actually run and do a little bit of something. We will see plenty of quarterback draws. We will see, maybe even a little read option. Who knows? What are your thoughts here on the quarterback situation in Madison?
Yeah, I mean, you had to go out and get a guy, I feel like, and they went out and got a guy. They got a guy who's had a lot of success. He's put up big numbers. He's had some down seasons or down games, but he's had some really big games against some really big competition. You look at Longo's offense, and everyone just associates it with a running quarterback because he had running quarterbacks. And when you have running quarterbacks, you tend to take advantage of them, especially guys who can throw. So you're moving the pocket more. Those guys are scrambling more. They got a little more cowboy to them. Tyler Van Dyke, you don't have to have a true dual threat quarterback in this offense. You got to have somebody who can deal the ball, who can get it out quick, who can make decisions, and who can take shots. And I think we saw that in the bowl game. The ability to take shots downfield is what can separate this offense from what we saw this year to what they hope for in the future. I think Van Dyke can definitely deal it, get it out quickly. I would say he's more athletic than people assume or think. He's athletic enough. He's enough where if they start running him and moving the pocket, the defenses have to, they have to. Well, I'm looking for the word. I don't even know where they have to count for him in the run game. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And so just leaving the question in the head, like, could he run? That's enough to make them account for him, and he can run. You're not going to run him all day. I would say one of the downsides, and you can talk to 10 different quarterback coaches and get 10 different opinions on a guy's mechanics release. He has a somewhat low release, but he does get it out quick. And he throws a good deep ball. And I like that he has some cowboy in him, because in order to optimize, in order to max out this offense, in order to get the big plays that you need, you're going to need to take shots downfield. A lot of people talk about not having that big outside receiver. We saw you can make up for it schematically. We saw, I think it was Tretch or Will on one of those switch routes where all of a sudden he becomes the outside guy and he's running deep, and defensive backs are passing him off. So I think there's going to be some great underneath threats in the next class. You've got Pauling, who can, he's on the smaller side, but he's a guy who can make plays in space, who can make explosive plays. And I think that they'll be able to manufacture enough to take shots with the quarterback that they'll have, and he's going to compete for a position without question. I think a running game that kind of suits more of the scheme is going to help. That will be nice. You'll have your thumper inside. You'll have some guys who can line up at receiver, come back to the backfield, go from backfield to out. I just think you're going to see a lot more tools in the toolkit to utilize to make this offense not only efficient but explosive, and that should get better next year.
I agree wholeheartedly, especially when the snaps will be coming back a little bit quicker, like we saw in the bowl game from Renfro. I know that he had a couple blocking issues, wasn't the best, but it was his first game back all season.
Rusty.
He was rusty, but those snaps were on point. Speaking of the offensive line, though, Jack Bicknell has been reassigned within the program, which is interesting. It opens up a job for a new offensive line coach on the staff. And this is interesting because in a lot of ways, Bicknell's position was, he came over with Longo from North Carolina. And so to see him sort of, moved over, however you want to phrase it, within a year, I think says something for sure, because, you think Wisconsin, you think offensive line tradition, and the line did struggle this year. Like, I think there's no bones about it. The line struggled in a lot of ways, heavily penalized unit, and just, didn't have the yards per attempt on the ground or in the air that we expected to see. So what does this say to sort of the guys in the room, everything that's happening there, and how do you expect them to address that? Go for a veteran coach, a younger coach? Like, how do you sort of make the most of this hire?
Well, I think it signals that they want to get better at the position. I think Bicknell was put in a tough spot where he had coached within Longo's offense and had the personnel for that offense. And then you got thrown in with guys who are doing things that they have never done before, seeing things that they have never seen before, terminology, whatever it is. They weren't built for that style necessarily. So his job was to, and I don't know how much they did of, let's adjust to our personnel versus let's make the personnel adjust to our scheme, because we will get the dudes in here. And you got to be careful when you're adjusting to personnel just for one season. A lot of people put too much into that first season. But at the same time, you'd like to see him, progress throughout the season. I don't know if they did that. I didn't watch enough to give a real commentary on that. I don't think it means that Bicknell's a bad coach. I think he was dealt a tough hand, and maybe the results aren't what everybody hoped for. I think the offensive linemen that they have coming in are a much better scheme fit. This isn't the old school, 6'8", 330 pound and 6'6" centers and all that stuff that are just going to go downhill and maul you. These guys were expected to block in space and work to the second level, and not just use power, but really, be more athletic and jump set and set a wall instead of what they have been doing in the past. Working out of the gun for the offensive line as a whole is a very different thing. And so I expected, even if it was the same personnel, even if it was Bicknell still as the coach, I think they would have gotten better in a year, but they wanted better and they felt that they needed to make a change. So it'll be interesting to see what they do coaching wise. Offensive line, in my opinion, your defensive backs coach, your offensive line coaches, they have to be your two best coaches. If there was one coach that I could not, or one position I could not coach coach offensive line. There is so many nuances. It is a position that you have to, it's almost like born and bred in it. Like you didn't have to play it, but you had to have studied it. You have had to have the passion for it to understand it. And there's a lot of guys that can be great technicians, guys who were former players of the position. And maybe that's what they're looking for. Guys who can teach the players to play within the scheme. But then there's other offensive line guys who are really good schematically. So it'll be interesting to see what they go for. Do they? I think Longo is going to call the shots schematically. So they're going to look for somebody who can really coach them up, I think, and get the most out of the talent that they have. And they've got some reinforcements coming in. I don't think they're too far off on the offensive line, but there's some work to do.
Yeah, there's definitely some work to do. I expect, it's interesting because Jack Nelson is coming back. So both the starting tackles are coming back, as well as one of the guards. So yeah, and it'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on here moving forward. You mentioned how hard it is to be an offensive line coach. And do you think that's because like you have to, it's really the unit. It's a sort of position group that functions the most as a unit, as opposed to teaching guys one-on-one. If you think about receivers coach, right? One-on-one release techniques. You don't have to worry about what your other receivers are doing. Yeah. Like you might have to spot that on certain schemes and certain plays, but every single play for the offensive line, they have to work together as a perfect 5-man unit, or else the play is going to be blown up.
No question. Yeah, got to get everybody on the same page. It's unique like that. Same thing with the secondary. You got to have you got to be able to teach technique. You got to be able to make them play within the system, and you've got to get them to work together, because the unit as a whole is not going to be good if only 4 of the 5 or 3 of the 5, unless you're running to one side and football guys on the backside aren't pursuing. But yeah, it is the one position, I guess, when you look at position overlap, quarterback and receiver, they got to be on the same page and stuff like that. But as a position group, and this is a lot of people complained about, why don't they get under center in these, short situations? Well, everybody's got to be on the same page. And if you're used to going out of the gun and going out of a clap, you would have to alter your entire practice schedule to get everybody to get up there under center, go off a count, fire off the ball at the same time. And when noise is involved and everything like that, I mean, Saban even went on a tangent about it, because, and I looked at the analytics. Yeah, there's some positives to getting under center, but it's really not that much different if you're effective from the gun and short yardage. And I'm a big proponent of being able to get under center. So for me to step back and say that is a big thing. But yeah, you got to have a synchronicity across the unit, and that's only going to get better as the unit, the team, the culture all gels under Fickell.
Well, Clint, you and I are a pretty darn good unit, if I do say so myself. We've got that synchronicity already, baby. And so we're going to keep coming back with it all the time. Clint, as always, great to see you, buddy. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in here to BadgerBlitz TV, your rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. Till next time, he's Clint Cosgrove. I'm Matt Perkins, and we'll see you in the den.
And I'll miss you in the den.